Marrying a girl like Ziri, especially one considered mad, was unthinkable. The elders, who had once praised Biko for his generosity, now looked at him with disdain. In the heart of Quito, a small, close-knit village deep in Africa, there lived a humble young man named Biko. He was an orphan who had learned to repair bicycles as a way to survive. Biko's hands were always greasy from fixing the villagers' bicycles, and though he had little money, he had a wealth of kindness. His generous heart and quiet smile endeared him to everyone. Despite his hardships, Biko lived a life of contentment. The villagers always came to him, not just for repairs but for advice, company, and warmth. He was the kind of man everyone knew and loved. The elders of the village often said, "Biko's heart is his wealth." One day, as Biko was closing up his small workshop, he noticed a girl, not much older than him, wandering aimlessly near the village square. She was dirty, her clothes torn, and her hair a wild mess. Her eyes had a distant look, and she mumbled to herself as if lost in another world. The villagers whispered that she was mad, a girl without family, who had wandered into the village long ago. Most avoided her, throwing her the occasional scrap of food but little else. Biko watched her for a moment, his heart heavy. She looked frail, starved even. He approached her cautiously, not wanting to scare her away. He knelt beside her, holding out a piece of bread he had saved from his own meager meal. She looked at him suspiciously but eventually took the bread and devoured it. From that day on, Biko made it a point to feed her whenever he saw her. He learned her name, Ziri, and though she rarely spoke, her eyes slowly started to soften whenever she saw him. Days turned into weeks, and a strange connection blossomed between the two. Biko, with his boundless compassion, began to care for her more deeply than he had anticipated. Before long, Biko found himself falling in love with Ziri, despite her fragile mind and the whispers of the village. Her innocence and vulnerability touched something deep within him. He began to dream of a life with her, believing that love, even in its purest form, could heal her wounded spirit. One evening, Biko approached the village elders and told them of his desire to marry Ziri. The reaction was swift and harsh. In Quito, there was an unspoken rule: marriages were arranged by families, not made for love. Marrying a girl like Ziri, especially one considered mad, was unthinkable. The elders, who had once praised Biko for his generosity, now looked at him with disdain. "You cannot marry her," the chief said, his voice stern. "It is against our tradition, against our way of life." But Biko stood his ground. "I love her," he said simply. "And love is more important than any tradition." The elders were furious, and the villagers, who had once been Biko's friends, now turned their backs on him. Biko and Ziri were shunned, rejected from the village they had both called home. They were banished, forced to live on the outskirts, away from the warmth and security of their community. Despite the hardship, Biko and Ziri built a small hut on the edge of the forest. Every day, Biko worked on bicycles in nearby towns, using his skills to earn just enough to keep them alive. Zuri's condition slowly began to improve in the quiet of the forest. She spoke more, smiled more, and sometimes, in the evenings, she would sit by the fire and hum a song from her childhood. Though life was difficult, Biko never regretted his decision. He had chosen love over tradition, and in that love, he found a strength he never knew he had. Even though they were outcasts, their small hut was filled with a kind of peace the village could never offer. Years later, when famine struck Quito, the villagers found themselves in need of Biko's skills once again. Their bicycles, which they relied on to travel for food and water, were breaking down, and none could repair them like Biko. Reluctantly, they sought him out. When the villagers arrived at his humble home, they were surprised to see Ziri, no longer the wandering mad girl, but a quiet, serene woman. She greeted them with a gentle smile, and Biko, as always, opened his doors without a hint of bitterness. Biko repaired their bicycles, refusing any payment. Slowly, the villagers began to see that love had not broken Biko or Ziri, it had healed them both. In time, they came to respect the couple's resilience, realizing that love, not tradition, was the true bond that held people together. The villagers, ashamed of their earlier rejection, invited Biko and Ziri back to the village, offering them a place in their hearts once more. Though Biko and Ziri accepted, They chose to remain in their forest home, where their love had grown free of judgment. And so, the outcasts became legends. In time, the story of Biko and Ziri was passed down through generations, a reminder that love, when pure and true, could break any chain, even the chains of tradition. And though they lived on the edge of the village, they were never alone again.